It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with your host, Jamie Dew, Chief Librarian Thomas Senna, and featuring Matt Ardell. And now, curator of the hall, Jamie Dew.
Thank you so much, Doug DeNance. It is a thrill to be back here with you on the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Before you come inside, if you would do me a favor, please wipe your feet. The SNL Hall of Fame podcast is a weekly affair where each episode we take a deep dive into the career of a former cast member, host, musical guest, or writer, and add them to the ballot for your consideration. Once the nominees have been announced, we turn to you, the listener, to vote for the most deserving and help determine who will be enshrined for perpetuity inside the hall. And that is how we play the game. It's just that simple. A little 411 for you. We have a new email address. It is the SNL Hall of Fame at gmail.com. That's the SNL Hall of Fame at gmail.com. Shoot us an email if you have any questions about the show or would like to guest on this show or the SNL Hall of Fame water cooler with Joe and Shari. So there's that. This week we are joined by our friend Darin Patterson of the SNL Nerds podcast. You can check that out wherever you find your quality podcasts. And Darin has quite the track record of nominating people in episodes. He joined us for the first time on season 2, where he nominated Tom Hanks, who got in. Then in season 3, he kicked off the season by nominating Dana Carvey, who also got in that year. He took the year off in season 4 and didn't visit us in season 5 either. But this year he's back. And I'm excited about this episode. So there's that. Here we go with an original, not ready for prime time player. It is the often overlooked Garrett Morris. Matt, what do you have to say about Garrett Morris?
Wow. Garrett, he 5'8", born February 1st, 1937 in New Orleans. He is an incredible talent. He studied drama at the HB studio and attended Juilliard. He's a triple threat, raised by a Baptist minister grandfather. He got his first taste of performance in the church choir. With 116 acting credits, 6 soundtrack credits, and 1 writer credit, he worked as a soloist and arranger for Harry Belafonte.
Get out.
Yeah, so he was part of Belafonte's band. During his time as a singer for Harry Belafonte, he was performing in Los Angeles and decided to go for a walk. Police cuffed him and dragged him to jail when he tried to show his hotel keys to prove where he's staying. After a background check, it came back clean. And then they checked the itinerary in his pocket and saw that he was part of Harry Belafonte's band. And all of a sudden they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Garrett Morris, Mr. Morris." Like so he that kind of changed his life. He became very active. He joined the Black Arts Repertory Theater and School, a cornerstone of the Black Arts movement in New York, and ended up being surveilled by the FBI during that time.
Gee whiz.
Yeah, so he has a file. But, he's also done things like he released an album called South African Freedom Songs with Pete Seeger and Guy Carowan. He appeared in Broadway in Hallelujah Baby and Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death. And he wrote a play called The Secret Place, Daddy Piku and Stagger Lee, which he penned for the Brooklyn school kids as part of a New York program to write a play for school kids in your home borough. And on top of all of that, he released a comedy album called Saturday Night Suite, which has some pure disco tracks on there. It is incredible. He survived a brush with death, having been shot in the chest and arm while being mugged. And
got to be kidding me.
Yeah, like that was in 1994, so not even that long ago. Did not go well for the shooter because there were some Garrett Morris fans in prison, and let's just say he didn't leave the prison. So yeah, that got that. You don't mess with with great comedians. People don't like that. So yeah, so Garrett Morris.
Garrett Morris in a wrapped in a bow by our friend Matt Ardell. And now we're going to check in with our other friend Thomas Senna as he digs in on Garrett Morris.
Thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of the SNL Hall of Fame. Today we have a Heritage nominee from Season 1, an original Not Ready for Primetime player. So I'm really excited to talk about Mr. Garrett Morris. And with me to talk about Garrett and his time at SNL is Darin Patterson from the SNL Nerds podcast, somebody who I haven't had on in like 2 or 3 seasons. It was long overdue. I knew I needed to get Darin back for Season 6 of the SNL Hall of Fame. Darin, how's it going, man?
It's going well, Thomas. It's going well. Yeah, it's been a minute. I haven't been around these parts in quite some time. I love what you've done with the place.
Yeah, well, thank you. Tied it up a little bit before you stepped into the hall. We make sure to dust and we make sure to everything is in its right place for special guests like yourself. So from one SNL podcaster to another, I got to make sure that my space is presentable for you guys, especially for other SNL podcasters. So it's wonderful to have you, man. I think you were on for a roundtable, an end of season roundtable. I think that's the last time we checked in on you. Yeah,
it was. That was a lot of fun. That was a blast, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. No, we had a blast talking about the different nominees from that season of the SNL Hall of Fame. I love chatting with fellow SNL podcasters. Like, we both were chatting beforehand that this is such a really neat community of SNL podcasters. Like, both buddies with John Schneider from the Saturday Night Network, the guys Gary and Brad from the Not Ready for Primetime podcast, Andrew Dick's doing his thing. So it's just really fun to have this fellow SNL podcaster on. Why don't you tell us what's going on lately over at SNL Nerds?
The listeners can go and listen to our 300th episode, which we just recorded. We hit the big 300.
Wow.
Which is bonkers. Yeah. It's an episode we did with Mike Diva, SNL film unit director, the man who directed such hits as I'm Just Pete, the Pete Davidson pre-tape, the Waffle House pre-tape for the Jenna Ortega episode, Mario Kart in the Pedro Pascal episode, the Christmas Carol pre-tape on the Steve Martin Short episode. This dude's done it all. So you guys go check that out, our 300th episode.
That's awesome. 300.
It was a pretty big milestone for us. We were like, oh wow, we've been really doing this for a while, haven't we?
You know, most podcasters don't even get to 5 episodes.
Really?
Yeah, I think I read that somewhere. Like, I think 5 episodes is like the average, if that. So people start a podcast, they bail after like 1 or 2 episodes. So 300's amazing, man.
Yeah, that makes us 60 times better than the average podcast then.
And you could fill it with you and John Trumbull, your co-host. You guys
Yes. Me and my co-host John Trumbull were 2 guys in New Jersey who are obsessed with SNL. So we, during the summer, since they've been off, we've just been kind of talking about SNL quote-unquote related movies.
Yeah.
Just because we've done all the directly connected to SNL movies. So now we're just like we just put out an episode of Throw Mama from the Train and Billy Crystal's in it. So that, and,
I think that's SNL adjacent. I don't know. We could get with Billy Crystal. I mean, as long as the cast member's on, I think that definitely qualifies.
Yeah, like as long as we could find one cast member in the cast, or if it was something Lauren produced, we kind of shrug and be like, all right, that works. Like our next episode, we're going to do A League of Their Own, one of my favorites. And John Lovitz is in that. So it's like, all right, that counts.
That's one of my favorite things about your podcast is you've carved out your own niche in that, like, you're exploring like SNL related movies, which I love. So 300, congratulations, Darin. Congratulations, John. Huge milestone. Go check out SNL Nerds. Follow them on social media and listen to their pod. It's an awesome one. So today we are chatting about Mr. Garrett Morris. So Garrett had a somewhat different path to SNL compared to the rest of the cast. He wasn't a groundling, didn't come from Second City. Garrett was a dramatic actor, singer, playwright. So Lauren was looking for a playwright, landed on Garrett, who then obviously became a cast member, of course, part of the original cast. So Darin, like, as an SNL nerd, what does Garrett overall kind of mean to you?
What does it mean to me? I mean, of course, right off the top, he was the first African-American cast member in SNL. I mean, that's a huge thing right there. I mean, and also when I think of Garrett, I kind of also think of almost like what could have been a little bit, just because it's like you said, like Garrett really didn't come up with the like the rest of the cast members through the improv channels. He just kind of he was like a theater kid, basically. He worked in the theater and playwrights and whatnot. So he was. I always felt like that's one of the things that's kind of separated him from the rest. Well, I mean, I think there was like a few things actually. It's the fact that first, African American. The rest of the other cast was white. All the writers were white. I don't know. Sometimes I think he might have been the only black guy in like the building.
Yeah, seems
it's very
like
possible.
Right?
Yeah, and so there's that. The fact that he doesn't come through the improv channels, that always kind of separated him, and the fact that he was like so much older than the rest of the cast too, which is something I think a lot of people don't even realize, is because the other cast members, they were all in their 20s when they got the show, like mid-20s, early 20s, something like that. Garrett was 38 when he got it. Like,
right.
It's like aside from him and George Coe, like those are the old dudes at the thing. So part of me does think, maybe those three things kind of are what separated him from the rest of the crew, and maybe writers and the cast members maybe didn't know exactly how to fit him into what they were doing. So it always seemed like he was kind of doing his own thing. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, I don't know if anybody actually wanted to write a sketch for Garrett. It seemed more like the writers were like, I have this idea for a sketch, and if Garrett can fit in it, okay.
Right.
Like
it was even more something like, because a lot of them came from Second City. I know Lorraine was a groundling, but a lot of them have even had sketches that they had performed together before SNL. So there was just like an uphill climb for Garrett. He had been in like I think he was in a band with not with Harry Belafonte, but it was a band of like Harry Belafonte kind of like nurtured and like mentored a little bit. So Garrett was like in that band. He was singing, acting, like I mentioned, playwright. So that he wasn't part of like that sketch and improv inner circle, which probably was a disadvantage to him. And you alluded to it, but I mean, one thing, of course, that we can argue is that him being sidelined as a black man. We saw for a long time afterward that SNL did have a problem with representation, Darin.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, I don't know if maybe they just weren't quite looking for that, or they were just kind of maybe more focused on just getting on the kind of humor that maybe they could only conceptualize or conceive as being radical without thinking about maybe how it maybe comes, how it may appear to like other people. Like, they've always had, SNL's always had issues with that. They're doing better, the fact that we have like now, like, we had Punky, but like people like Bowen or Devin and Ego and like all these other different perspectives. kind of Marcello now, like all these other different perspectives coming up with ideas that, like ideas that wouldn't have come to other maybe certain types of writing. But like sketches that maybe like Ego has done, like things that kind of maybe include like a vernacular or have like a viewpoint from a certain community that you wouldn't have normally thought of. Like another, I'm going off on a tangent here, sorry. Like one sketch I thought of like was the Sarah Lee sketch from the Harry Styles episode.
Yes.
The one that had like Cecily and Bowen, and then Harry Styles came in and he'd been posting all these odd things on Instagram. And like the wordage they were using, I was like, oh, this is written by Bowen or something, because like I don't see anybody else kind of, unless you know about that community, then a lot of other people just wouldn't know about that. It seems like a lot of the writers who were around when Garrett was around didn't just quite know about his world, so they didn't maybe know how to write it. So that's why maybe they had a harder time trying to figure out what he could do.
Yeah, and like the late 70s, I don't think it was as emphasized, or writers and people behind the scenes didn't necessarily care about, about certain voices. And I think you can, like, if they thought that the audience wouldn't get certain points of view, you can still make those funny. You can kind of train the audience to understand certain things. You could put Garrett or somebody on Weekend Update and kind of, even if you have to kind of explain the backgrounds, explain the context for a few seconds. We saw them do that on Saturday Night Live all the time in the 70s.
Yeah.
Even if you have to explain context, you can make it funny. So I think they just didn't care around that time.
I think that what you're saying is like that's something they finally caught around when Eddie Murphy kind of came on the scene. And I'm not sure exactly who was writing for him at the time. He might have just been writing his own stuff or whatever. But like I think when Eddie came in, they're like, oh, this is like from a fresh new viewpoint that maybe we don't know about, but is like kind of worth exploring and investigating and making some sketches about.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of credence to that for sure. But all that said, like Garrett was such a great singer, such a great actor. I think he added a wonderful dimension to the show when it was on screen, because Darren, I've always found, this applies to hosts especially in my opinion, but even cast members, I think some of the best people to do sketch comedy are good actors. I think you need to have a sense of humor, but you also need to know how to act. And that's something that they could have really tapped into with Garrett. Like, talk about acting chops. He's probably the best actor at that time, maybe on the whole cast.
Yeah, no, that's true. He could have done that. I think what he might have done, which maybe kind of, was to his, detriment, was he tried to be maybe as funny as the rest of the cast members in some things, or like he tried to meet them on their terms when he should have just kind of stuck with his strengths, and and that would have been his would be more better path forward. Where he probably came up saying like, well, I'm a dramatic actor, I know theater, but these guys are like comedic improv, so let me try to keep up with them and try to play their game. But I feel like he should have kind of maybe played his own game and found his way through what the rest of the improv people are doing. It's almost like, I don't know if you saw, what was it, Batman Forever? The one with Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey from back in the day, that Batman.
Yeah.
Where, I'm really going off tangents today.
No,
where Jim Carrey was the Riddler, and he was he just really played it to this nth degree, and Tommy Lee Jones was Two-Face, and he tried to match Carrey's crazy, and it just got too much crazy.
Yeah.
Whereas if Tommy Lee Jones maybe played it more straight and played it more kind of down here, it would have had a better balance. But I remember that movie just being kind of really off kilter and not great because of that. So I think maybe Garrett could have done that. He could have been maybe the more serious, grounded person or force in a sketch.
Right.
And while everybody else was kind of acting a little bit crazier around him.
Yeah, but he was trying to find his footing, so it's easy to understand why he would be like, well, it's a comedy show, and these guys have I think I've even heard Garrett say this. He's like looked at all of them and say, "Oh, they're like funny people. They're like trained funny people." So I kind of have to match that. But maybe looking back, you could say, I was maybe the best actor of the bunch, so that's what I could have contributed. But you could see it when I revisit old SNL. A lot of my takeaways from some sketches, like, man, Garrett acted his ass off, and it like helped the scene.
Yeah.
Like big time. I think of like somebody who we're going to talk about this season, Adam Driver. To me, he's one of the better hosts in SNL history because he's like a great actor. And a lot of those great dramatic actors do really well as hosts on SNL. So I just think that skill set really crosses over to sketch comedy.
Yeah, no, for sure. That definitely does. Like, you have comedic actors that like try to be the funniest one in the sketch, and that can come across as maybe, depending on the comedic actor, it could be a little obnoxious. But like dramatic actors always kind of know that less is more, and like, you don't always have to be the big boisterous clown in the room. You can just maybe play it down a little bit more and be a little bit more understated, and find the rhythms and just add to the sketch, and that's a better path. And while it might not be like the flashiest role, or the one that everybody remembers, you still did your part to maybe flesh out the sketch a little bit more and get it to greater heights.
Exactly. It services the sketch. Sketch comedy nerds like us will pinpoint that contribution and give the credit where credit's due. So as far as Garrett goes, I'm really excited. I want to dig into his work on SNL. So is there something that like immediately like kind of stands out to you that he did on the show?
One of the biggest standouts immediately is the president of the New York School for the Hard of Hearing. It was a quick little thing he always did on Weekend Update with Chevy, where like they have him in those little like hard of hearing bubbles, and Chevy would say he's here for the hard of hearing, and Chevy would be like, our top story tonight, and then you just see Garrett cupping his hands over his mouth, screaming the exact same thing that Chevy's saying.
Our top story tonight, President Ford is finally over that stubborn week-long cold.
Stubborn week-long cold.
It was like one of those really simple, dumb gags that will get a laugh. I remember getting a laugh out of that the first time I saw it when I was like a little kid, where I was like, it's simple, it's kind of corny, it's almost like a dad joke, but damn it makes me smile.
And it lives on too. Garrett, he came back, and was it at SNL 40 that he he did that, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
It was one of the SNL anniversary specials that they brought Garrett back to do that on Weekend Update. So that one definitely lives on. I mean, the tone is like just yelling, but Garrett's not trying to like be a clown or be, he's just sort of like doing what needs to be done, and it lives on almost 50 years later. Garrett doing that.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
I'm sure everybody will remember that. Weekend Update, I kind of want to stick with too, since you started there on Weekend Update. A character he did 10 times, 9 of those on Weekend Update was Chico Escuela, his sports correspondent, which is what that when I think of Garrett, I think of like a lot of the fun stuff he did as Chico Escuela, Darren.
Yes, me too. I mean, it was like, like you said, it was like a character that just kind of popped up here and there a little bit. It wasn't, it didn't get too overused. There was no, Emily Latella or anything like that, but it was...
Poor Emily Latella. Brought up. That's like the classic example, but you're right. I agree with
right? That. She got so much airtime. It was like, wow, you're really trying to make Emily Latella happen. But I mean, Chico Escuela, like he had, again, much like Garrett, he kind of went at his own pace. The baseball been very, very good to me and whatnot. It was like a very not small, but very understated character and a very understated performance, but memorable, to say the least, I'd say.
Baseball been very, very good to me. This week, baseball been very, very good to Willie Mays. Say, hey, Willie always keep his eye on the ball. In the Super Bowl, we have, highlights. Roll, please. Jackie Smith did not keep his eye on the ball.
I think it is actually like kind of a nuanced thing, because I love the conceit of like he doesn't know anything, especially the first one. The first time he came on as a sports correspondent, he doesn't know about any other sports. He's just trying to like push his way through like the NHL highlights, and he doesn't really know much about basketball. Then when baseball, he just kind of jumps right in and just talks about it. So I just think that's a very funny conceit. Chico always seemed like a nice guy. Has that catchphrase, man. Like everybody who knows the show, it seems like knows the baseball been very, very good to me. And he another one that lives on.
Yeah, no, it's not like one of the bigger catch. It's no Too Wild and Crazy Guys, but I feel like it's another it's another thing where it's like, it's like a catchphrase that may not be that big, but it is known. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I think more serious SNL nerds like us would appreciate Garrett more. Like, he's always just been kind of, he's not like the big flashy breakout star, but people like us, we're like, we see what you're doing there. He's
if you really go back and watch the first 5 seasons, there's so many times where we're like, oh my gosh, Garrett, and I love the Chico character too, because like it had an arc. Where it had a really fun arc. There's at one point where he was quitting Weekend Update because he went back to Mets spring training to try to make the team again, because his background was that he was an all-star for the New York Mets. So, but then when he went to spring training, it turns out that some of the team was upset with him because he wrote a detailed account of Major League Baseball, and it was called Bad Stuff About the Mets, book that he wrote. So he had to endure himself. So there was like a whole narrative arc with Chico Escuela going to Mets spring training, then flaming out. So that's something that I kind of would love to see more of on SNL, especially with Weekend Update kind of characters. Like, I want to see those narrative. We got that with Seth and Stefan, but Darin, like, I love that there's like some sort of narrative arc here.
I'd love to have, like you said, like something like narrative arcs in SNL or even Runners. I think they tried to do Runners a little bit back in the day. Like, they had that when Kate McKinnon was on, they still had that was it? I think she had like some little bit of Runner through there. I can't even remember it, but I don't know. Like, part of me thinks because of this, I guess, TikTok world we're living in, where they like little sound bites and clips are a little bit more important just to get eyes and views. I don't know if there's a place for like a Runner or Marianne Conway. That's who. They had the Marianne Conway thing where Kate McKinnon was like on her knees throughout the whole show. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Mm-hmm. All right. Sorry, I just remembered. Yeah. So like, I don't know. I mean, I would love a Runner. I would love arcs, but again, like because we're in this world now where like quick little 5-minute video clips are kind of how we just ingest everything now. I don't know if I just don't know if there's room for like an arc or a Runner or anything like that anymore. It's a bummer though. I mean, because they're really cool.
No, I could see that. No, it was really cool with Chico. That was a character too that I would hear people who watched SNL live in the late 70s always reference. They would always reference Chico Escuela and baseball being very, very good to me and all of that. So I think this kind of like almost lives on as far as like this might be like Garrett's legacy at SNL as this character, because I really have heard a lot of older SNL fans when I was a kid, they would always reference this. Like, I knew what this was before I even saw it on screen. I knew what this was.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, totally memorable, totally great. It's fantastic.
What else is there that might have popped out to you for Garrett?
I mean, the one thing that comes to my mind is the, I forget the name of the sketch, but it was like that aristocrats dinner that happened, and Garrett is a person who's, what you call it? He has like a staff in his hand, and he slammed against the ground to introduce people to the party. Say, Lord and Lady Gardner, Lord and Lady, blah, blah, blah. And then these two people come in, and he says, Lord and Lady Douchebag. And we get this whole sketch about, this Lord and Lady in this fancy high society party, and their names are douchebags.
Well, to your point, that sketch, which I think honestly was the last sketch of the original era, It happened in the very last episode. Buck Henry hosted it in season 5.
Yes.
I think it may have been the last sketch of the original era or close to it. Maybe there was one more after that. But to your point, Garrett made that sketch because if you ask somebody, I think a lot of like casual sketch comedy fans will tell you, oh yeah, I've heard of like Lord and Lady Douchebag, but they couldn't tell you the beats of the sketch.
No, right?
They just recite Garrett saying that line. So that's to your point. Like Garrett made the most out of. He wasn't the star of the sketch. I think it was Buck Henry and Harry Shearer. Honestly,
yeah.
But Garrett he was the star of that sketch ultimately.
Lord and Lady Douchebag.
Yeah, and like I know Bill Murray was in that sketch because like at one point he goes like douchebag, like he does that. But yeah, I don't remember anything anyone else actually said in that sketch. Now you think like the one thing you can think about it or totally remember is Garrett saying Lord and Lady Douchebag. I mean that's him taking, I guess what he knew was going to be like the big line that would get the big laugh. Once everybody in the audience kind of sees where the sketch is going, that's going to be their big aha moment. So like he probably looked at that and knew like, oh, I really need to really like enunciate and make a big deal out of this one phrase that like I just know is going to be the one that sticks in anybody's brain.
Exactly. He brought out his booming voice. He almost brought out his singing voice.
Yeah.
When he said that.
Absolutely.
That was a great example. That was way back at the end of in season 5, like the very last episode of the original era. Garrett still made his mark for sure. In season 1, and almost maybe a missed opportunity, they did this 4 times, but something that I always loved when I went back and rewatched a lot of the original seasons was he hosted a show called Black Perspective.
Yes.
Yeah, so he did that in episode 4 was his first time. So they kind of gave Garrett like his talk show. He played probably a different version of himself, and he had on Jane Curtin playing a different version of herself. But these Black Perspective, they could have been a thing. Like again, he did it 4 times, but they were always like they had jokes about just things that like to your earlier point that. There were jokes involving like Black Perspective. That's the name of the show, the Black community. But these were ones, Darren, that I loved. It's like you said, he had Jane Curtin on the first time. Fran Tarkenton appeared on season 2. So it was basically kind of Garrett and the show almost mocking like stereotypes. And just kind of poking fun of them. Like Fran Tarkenton was talking about how like Black guys can't read defenses and that's why they aren't quarterbacks, and Fran was made to look like the moron in that sketch. But was kind of the theme of this.
Yeah, I remember those are like really interesting. I mean, like of course Tim Meadows would kind of do something like that with,
I've been called it Perspectives.
Yeah, outstanding. But yeah, like that's like another thing that like Garrett had that didn't. I don't want to say it didn't take off. They were really cool and really interesting, but yeah, like they're not. You don't see them too often when you look at an SNL retrospective. Like they'll show you, Samurai Chef or something a lot, but you won't really see that. Like I do remember there was like another one where Julian Bond, when he hosted, and there was this who's this politician, this black politician back in the day, and like there was this one really interesting sketch that they got into where. I mean, I kind of wish they went further with it, but like the conceit of it is like they talk about how like light-skinned blacks are smarter than dark-skinned blacks. I remember seeing that. I was like, wow, that's a bold.
Yeah, that happened in like 1976 or 77. Yeah, that was like in season 2.
They've been saying that whites are smarter than blacks for hundreds of years, baby, right? And we have only had these IQ tests for 20, 30 years. Now, how did the IQ of white intellectual superiority originate in the first place?
Well, that's a very interesting point. My theory is that it's based on the fact that light-skinned blacks are smarter than dark-skinned blacks.
Say what?
Garrett just kind of waits a beat, just kind of stares at him in that Garrett way, those eyes he has. I thought that was pretty hilarious. I mean, really, really ballsy for its time. I was like, wow. I don't even know if I'd try that sketch today.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Like,
They only did those black perspective ones like 4 times. Cecily Tyson was on the last one, and that was Cecily telling Garrett that black women have gotten a raw deal because the black man is such a loser. Garrett was like, say what? And he had this reaction. So it's this like kind of tension that between he and Cecily Tyson because she just kind of said that. So I would have loved to see like more of those and more like perspective in Garrett's voice and more black perspective, honestly.
Yeah, like I remember, from what I've read, like Garrett, it was a thing where he was like really kind of trying to fight to get stuff like that on. He was trying to kind of get, like sketches that are kind of seen more from the black perspective, but like he was kind of just hitting so many walls with that. And so like the fact that he got the little that he did, I think is a huge accomplishment, even though maybe people didn't quite get it at the time. I think the fact that he put it out there, and I'd imagine like there must have been some black comics coming up that's seen that and was like inspired by that.
Yeah, I would think so. He tells a funny story. He speaks highly of Al Franken overall.
Right.
He said nice things about Al Franken, but he did say that Al Franken kind of pushed back on some of his ideas, and he said one time he challenged Al Franken to a wrestling match. And he said he thought he was going to get the worst of it probably because Al was a wrestler and he's kind of a stocky build guy. Like Al's kind of a bigger dude. He was a bigger dude than what you might think.
It's
so
like
Garrett's
Wolverine.
like, I challenged him, and he's like, I knew I was going to probably get my ass kicked, but I challenged Al Franken, so...
SNLWF.
Yeah, exactly. So Garrett did have to almost literally fight for screen time sometimes.
I had no idea. Yeah, that makes sense. Al Franken, from what I know about him, like especially in his younger days, he was a bit of a, he had a bit of a temper, or he was just gave you a lot of pushback. He's the man that came up with limo for a lamo.
Limo for a lamo. Yeah, he's the one that when everybody, like the cast, I think it was in the late 80s or early 90s, I think it was George Harrison who was like playing piano and just basically putting on this like Beatles show in the office for people, and Al's the one who came out of his office and said, "Get back to work. You guys got some writing sketches to do." And
yeah, he's
so I don't blame Garrett
else.
sometimes for trying to fight him, push back on that. One other memorable moment, you mentioned the Julian Bond one, I think is very memorable. Chico Escuela, Deaf and Hard of Hearing one, the Lord and Lady Douchebag. So Garrett has these like memorable things. One thing I also knew about when I was a kid was, if you remember, and this was in season 1 as well, when they had what they called like Death Row Follies.
Yes.
Prison.
Yes.
So yeah, they're putting on a performance of Gigi at a prison and auditioning inmates.
Oh, yeah.
So you remember this one?
Yes, I do. I do.
Yeah. So where does it go from here? If you can remember the beats.
I believe if we're thinking about the same one, this is the one where Garrett comes out as an inmate and he starts singing the song.
I'm gonna get me a shotgun and kill all the whiteys I see. When I kill all the whiteys I see, and whitey won't bother me. Gonna get me a shotgun and kill all the whiteys I see. Then I'll get a white woman who's wearing a navy blue sweater.
Thank you.
Navy blue sweater.
That's the one. And it comes out of nowhere too. It's like, because Dan and Chevy played inmates for the first 2 auditions, and then Garrett comes out and he's saying that he was in solitary confinement and he was writing this thing, and then he goes to the piano, and I think maybe by episode 11 the audience had heard Garrett probably sing.
Yes.
So they knew that he was like this maybe like a really good singer. So you're expecting, and even sometimes I forget because I'm expecting like Garrett to kind of like sing this beautiful song, but no.
Yeah, so it's like
his famous song.
Yeah, it's like this kind of jaunty, upbeat song. Yes. I'm gonna take all the shotgun and kill all the whiteys. Yeah, it's like, which even makes it funnier. And like it's just talking about, like once he does that, Whitey won't bother him.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He said he got that from a real thing, and it wasn't like kill all the whiteys. I see. It was much, it was a very, very, very racist little performance that Garrett happened to see. So he kind of flipped the script on that. Yeah. So that's kind of where Garrett said he got it from. But such a memorable moment. I knew the words to that song before I even saw the context to it as well. And that's something that like lives on with Garrett.
Yeah, and again, that's another way, or another instance of Garrett kind of taking over a sketch with the little screen time he has. Because I don't remember what happened before that sketch or after Garrett saying it. Like all the other parts of that sketch, I don't quite remember, but I definitely remember Garrett singing that song and talking about getting a shotgun. But like I know, like there was some stuff before and after he performed, but I don't quite recall it.
But no, Garrett's part, that was the star of the show. The only reason why I remember the beats, because I just kind of recently watched it.
Oh, okay. All right.
But like, but other than that, that's all you remember from the sketch, because it's so like shocking and memorable and hilarious. And I think Gilda is part of the sketch, and they tell Albie, they warn her basically, or they say, oh, you might want to like button your top button a little bit more because these men haven't seen a woman in years or whatever. And then of course they all take a shining to put it nicely to Gilda throughout the sketch.
To put it nicely, yes. That's the nice way of saying it.
Yeah.
Because that I remember, and that was wow.
Yeah. There was one more that I kind of that I think really sticks out with some people, and Garrett says that he's pretty proud of this one. I've heard him talk about it, and it's called the White Guilt Relief Fund.
Oh yes.
Sir. I'm Garrett Morris, talking to all you white Americans about the way black people have been treated in America. Now I know a lot of you feel guilty, and you should. My great-great-grandmother was brought over here on a slave ship and was raped by her white master. And my grandfather was lynched by a mob for not tipping his hat to a white lady. Now they're dead now, and there's nothing you can do to erase their suffering. However, if you would like to relieve your guilt, I'm willing to accept money as a representative victim of 400 years of repression. Send your check or money order to White Guilt Relief Fund, care of Garrett Morris, age 70, West 127th Street, New York, New York.
Good perspective. I like it.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that I wanted more of.
Yeah, like that's actually a pretty smart, a smart concept. Like I don't know why they didn't kind of do more things like that. They just kind of, I don't know. It seems like maybe the writers just had their own ideas, and then they just kind of were like, all right, we'll give Garrett this one thing, and he that'll make him happy, and then we can do our thing, what we want to do. But I don't know. I feel like they left money on the table in a way. They could have like explored Garrett's mind a little bit more and worked with him a little bit more, and gotten like all these other great sketches from perspectives no one else maybe was even thinking about looking at.
Yeah, but, they really could have. Yeah, I mean, they were really funny. They were really short too. Like that White Guilt Relief Fund one wasn't that long. It's something that you could plug in. Like that's kind of a replicable concept that you could plug in if you need a minute 10 to fill. Honestly, like that's something you could do.
Yeah, that could be like a TikTok. That's like TikTok, perfect TikTok length.
It really is. Yeah, that's like for the TikTok era. Garrett was ahead of his time.
He was ahead of his time.
Garrett created TikTok, if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds. I haven't looked into that, but that sounds right.
That checks out. Yeah,
it checks out. Story checks out.
Thank you, Garrett. Is there anything else before we kind of like move on post SNL stuff for Garrett?
I've always liked his that one role he had as the best friend Cliff for the Fenstruck Brothers.
Oh yeah,
like he didn't have too much to do there, but like he kind of came in and came out, and he'd always acted like a good sort of straight man to help these two dudes just try to get foxy lady single women's.
Yes. I remember Cliff very well. I don't know if I undersold it honestly, but I think he's on the short list, and he might be the greatest singer in SNL history. Anna Gasteyer is amazing. Cecily recently, Chloe Trost currently, but is there a better singer as far as cast than Garrett?
I mean, all those singers you mentioned are great. Melissa Villaseñor, for the little time she did get to sing, she's great. But I think the fact that Garrett is like classically trained and he like sung, Mozart songs and Don Ottavino songs. He's like the fact that he can sing like operatic stuff, I think maybe puts him a notch above all those other singers you mentioned. Because they're all great and have beautiful voices, but like when you hear, Garrett Morris has a voice of an angel.
Yeah,
he
for
can
sure.
sing he can sing like Ave Maria type stuff, and that's pretty special.
Yeah, 100%. I would put Garrett number one, probably Anna Gasteyer right after that. She's still doing Broadway stuff. Like, she's an incredible singer. And then everybody else is kind of fighting after that, after Garrett and Anna. But that should be part of his legacy as well. Like, the most talented singer in SNL history.
Yeah, you can't dismiss his singing prowess. Like, I mean, I think there's enough stuff out there that people know he can sing when he sang on the show, but I feel like it's something that doesn't get brought up as much as it should. Because I mean, my man's got pipes. He's got pipes.
Definitely. So after SNL, he made one cameo since he left the show in 1980 with the original cast. Garrett's made one cameo, not including SNL 40 and all those. It was in November of 2002. A pop quiz here, and I'll admit I didn't know this until a couple days ago. Okay. Do you know the context of this cameo that happened in an episode in November of 2002?
I don't believe so, no.
He appeared in an Astronaut Jones sketch.
Oh!
Out of nowhere, with it was Brittany Murphy, and of course Astronaut Jones, the Tracy Morgan character, and it was, Garrett was standing right by him, and I forgot who else. So there was a third guy. It was Nelly.
Nelly?
It was Nelly.
I was not expecting you to say that.
Yeah, this is 2002. So it was Tracy as Astronaut Jones, and then Nelly and Garrett, and then Brittany Murphy was the host. So Garrett appeared in Astronaut Jones, Darren.
That is wild. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, 22 years, almost 23 years after he left the show, that was his only appearance.
Yeah, that is wild. I kind of wish he'd made more appearances. But yeah.
Yeah, me too. But hopefully we'll see him here on SNL 50. I assume so. He guest starred in a lot of sitcoms, Different Strokes, The Jeffersons, Hill Street Blues, Married with Children, all over the place. If you watch Martin like I did, main part of the cast of Martin, very beloved, The Jamie Foxx Show, Two Broke Girls. So man, I don't know, he's still around. He appeared in Ant-Man in 2015, which was awesome. They made a reference to him playing Ant-Man on SNL.
Yes, wasn't he the first person to ever play Ant-Man in TV or film?
It's live action or something. Yeah. I think he is the first. Yeah. So I'm glad that was a little tip of the cap to Garrett playing Ant-Man, and that it was a parade of superheroes kind of sketch.
Oh, yes, I remember that. That was a good one.
Yeah, so awesome, Darren, when Garrett just pops up in something you're watching, right? Get you excited.
Yeah, it does. It's like, oh yeah, he's still out here. He's still doing it. He's always just seemed kind of very zen almost. He's just a very laid back dude, and he's just kind of happy where he's at, and he just has a really great kind of aura about him. I don't know. I never met the man, but I feel like if we ever did, I would feel at peace at one.
Yeah.
With myself through him.
He's Buddhist.
Really?
Yeah, so that tracks.
Oh, wow.
No, Garrett's Buddhist. Yeah.
I just made all that shit up. I had no idea. It works.
That's awesome. You have a good feel for it.
Wow.
I think Garrett would be pretty zen. I think he has said that he's Buddhist. Wow. So yeah, that's a good read of a person, Darren.
Wow, way to go, me. Namaste.
I did get that vibe. I think Martin was the first thing that I had. I mean, I think I had seen some old SNL clips when he was on, but I think Martin was my first real exposure to Garrett.
Right.
So I do remember that, just him being the funny station manager, the kind of the casual. So that was actually my first exposure to Garrett, was Martin, I think.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people that grew up in the 90s, it was that too. And I remember him from Martin, of course, and Jamie Foxx Show later on in the 90s. But like, I guess I was big enough. I was a big enough SNL nerd to like, oh wait, that's the guy who was on. That's Chico Escuela. That's the guy that was on that SNL show that I watched the reruns of on Comedy Central.
That's the guy that was going to grab the shotgun. I remember him.
Yeah, he was going to kill all the...
Yes. So, Lamorne Morris will be playing Garrett in the upcoming Saturday night movie.
No
so
relation.
given, like, one of the things you do on your podcast is discussing SNL-related movies, I'm sure you're excited about this one. This could be, like, the holy grail of SNL movies for you guys.
Yeah, no, we are super. As soon as the trailer dropped, we were both super pumped. I think I watched that trailer at least 5 or 6 times. Yeah, we're like me and my buddy John Trumbull. We I think we spent. There was like one episode we put out recently. We spent like at least 15 minutes just talking about that trailer. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I love the way it looks. I think it looks great. I love the way. There's this one scene in the trailer where Lamorne Morris is kind of looking at Jim Henson, like while he's smoking a cigarette, and the stare that he gives Jim Henson, it looked a lot like a young Garrett Morris. Like for a minute, I was like, oh, that looks like Garrett. Yeah. Like, so I'm looking forward to that, and I just really like the look of it. I think everybody kind of who's playing whoever they're playing kind of gets it. Like the guy that's playing young Lorne Michaels kind of has his speech patterns down and his little pout. But he doesn't do it to like a extent where it's like a goofy caricature. You know, it's just he's just like, you know, yeah, it's like he has like the little pout going on and the voice down. The guy that plays Chevy kind of has Chevy's voice down. Yeah, like I'm really looking forward to this. Like I mean I'm not gonna take the day off work or anything, but like I think I'm gonna definitely see this opening weekend, maybe opening night. But like I am so pumped for this.
I want to see it opening night, but my wife's going to be out of town, and I might have to wait for her to get back because she really wants to see it too. I don't know. This is a moral quandary with the husband. Do I adhere to my SNL passion as a podcast? Maybe I could justify it as like, I'm a podcaster. I got to see it opening night, honey, and then we'll see it again maybe when you get back. But I don't know. This is a moral quandary for me, Darren.
Yeah, I know. I've been in those shoes where it's like, oh, she's out of town, but I really want to see this show.
Maybe I just go and then I pretend to be surprised. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you don't want to do that. A marriage is built on honesty.
Thomas. Fair enough. Yeah, you're damn right. So either way, I'll definitely be seeing it soon afterward. Lamorne Morris seems like he has Garrett's kind of aura down a little bit. There's this trailer where he kind of introduces it, and it seems like he's really got a pretty good feel for Garrett. I love Lamorne in New Girl. A lot of stuff he's done as well. I liked him in the new season of Unstable, even though that season was I thought I liked Lamorne in the season. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing his portrayal of Garrett and just the movie overall. And I get skeptical with biopics, especially with SNL kind of things, but this does look really promising. It does.
I mean, Lamorne Morris has always been really good. I really liked him in I don't know if you saw the movie Game Night. Like that movie. I haven't. It's really funny. It's really good. Like I saw it on like Hulu a while ago on a whim, just because I heard a lot of friends say it's really funny. You should check it out, and I checked it out, and it's like on the level of almost like Bridesmaids or like The Hangover or like all the big comedies that came out in the early. But it's like smarter and it's really well shot and like Game Night, fantastic movie. But anyway, Saturday night, we're talking about that movie.
Yeah, so we're pumped for Saturday night, pumped for the Garrett Morris depiction by Lamorne Morris. So now's the time, Darren. We've reached the point in the show where you kind of make an appeal to people. So why don't you tell us, like, why should listeners, SNL fans, and folks at the SNL water cooler appreciate Garrett's place in SNL history?
Because first of all, you're the first African American cast member. Boom, right there. And secondly, yes, he may not be the most memorable one of the group, or the one that got the most the most spotlight or got the most accolades, but you still remember him. Like you still, even though you didn't get that much screen time or much lines, you still remember Chico Escuela. You still remember the president of the New York School for the Hard of Hearing. You still remember, like, those things still reside in your brain. for some reason. Like, he's always somebody who's made quite a lot with not with the little he's given. Like, you still remember, hearing him sing with that beautiful angelic voice of his. Like, he stays in your memory. He's always been like a solid cast member, and while it's a shame like he never kind of got his due, you still remember him. Like, he still kind of sticks around in your brain, and he might be the unsung hero, I'd say, of the original SNL cast.
So there's that. Thank you so much, Darin Patterson from the SNL Nerds podcast. Check that out if you're listening to this and you don't listen to the SNL Nerds podcast. What are you thinking? That's, get your priorities straight. Add it to your playlist. Thanks, Darin. It's great to have you back. I'm real curious if you keep your streak up. Tom Hanks, Dana Carvey, that's a pretty good pedigree that you've established. And I am very curious to see whether or not your luck is with Garrett Morris. So there's that. Let's go to the Garrett Morris sketch that Thomas has selected here. And I want to tell you that it is the first Chico Escuela appearance on Weekend Update. Obviously, we listened to Thomas and Darin, and Chico Escuela was certainly a big part of Garrett Morris's 5-year tenure at SNL. This took place season 4, episode 8. So that's his first appearance. Wow. So really, he was only season 4 and season 5 that he was Chico Escuela. To me, it was something that was just, it was always there. I don't know. Like, I guess because of the clip shows, I'm skewed. At any rate, let's go to that now.
Now we'd like to welcome a new member to our update team, the former all-star second baseman for the New York Mets, Chico Escuela. Welcome, Chico. Chico will be covering the sports team for Weekend Update.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Baseball being very, very good to me. Thank you, Hayne. P.T. Ross. Baseball being very, very good to Pete Ross. $3.2 million para Pete Ross. Charlie Hustle, you bet. Thank you very, very much. And football. I don't know football. In Dominican Republic, football is, how you say, soccer. Your football? I don't know. In National Hockey League? I don't know. In baseball being very, very good to me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Oh man, that's freaking fantastic. What baseball been very, very good to me is just like Thomas said in the conversation. It's just one of those things I knew, and I was born in 1974, so I was one and a half when SNL began. So clearly I don't remember that. My first memories are season 9, really. Maybe a little bit of season 8, but I didn't really get into things until season 10. So there's that. I don't know whether or not Garrett Morris makes the Hall. It's going to be interesting. Tune in this week to the SNL Hall of Fame water cooler to hear what Joe and Shari have to say. I joined them this week on the show, And it should be interesting to take note of their feelings and thoughts on this. Thanks for joining us this week. It's always a pleasure. On behalf of Thomas and Matt, I want to thank Darin Patterson once again, and do me one last favor. On your way out, as you walk past the Weekend Update exhibit, turn out the lights, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNLHOF. This is DeNance saying, see you next week.
To podcasts and such.